Packing for the journey. This hilarious extract is from the book Three Men in a Boat, written down by Jerome K. Jerome. Three friends decided to go on a holiday in a boat down the river Thames. So, who were the three friends? Three friends were the writer himself, the author. George and Harris were the three friends, and they were accompanied by their dog Montmorency. This extract describes how the three friends packed for the journey. So, let's see. Let's start reading the chapter. We made a list of the things to be taken, and a pretty lengthy one it was before we parted that evening. Lengthy means long list. The next day, which was Friday, we got them all together and met in the evening to pack. We got a big bag for the clothes and a couple of hampers for the foodstuff and the cooking utensils. What is hampers? Hampers are large baskets with lids used for carrying food. One that we usually take for picnics, right? We moved the table up against the window, piled everything in a heap in the middle of the floor, and sat round and looked at it. I said I would pack. I rather pride myself on my packing. So the author was very proud of his packing. He was very confident in his packing skills. Packing is one of those many things that I feel I know more about than any other person living. I impressed the fact upon George and Harris and told them that they had better leave the whole matter entirely to me. They fell into the suggestion with a readiness that had something uncanny about it. Uncanny means strange and mysterious. George put on a pipe and spread himself over the easy chair, and Harris cocked his legs on the table and lit a cigar. Cocked his legs means put up his legs on the table. So what happened was the author said that the author actually wanted that he would supervise and he would instruct his two friends and they would do the packing. But what had happened was just the opposite. They were relaxing. One was putting a pipe on and was sitting comfortably on the over the easy chair, and the second one was sitting with his legs up on the table. See here on the next page, you can see the picture as well. How they both are sitting in a relaxed way, right? And the author is doing all the packing. So this was hardly what I intended. What I had meant, of course, was that I should supervise and that Harris and George should potter about under my directions. I pushing them aside every now and then with, "Oh, you, here, let me do it." There you are, simple enough. Really teaching them, as you might say. So he just want to teach them. He would just want to be bossy around them. Okay, but everything happened was the opposite. Their taking it in the way they did irritated me. Now everything was irritating because they were sitting relaxed in a very relaxed way, the friends, and he was only doing the work, so that was getting very irritating now. There is nothing that does irritate me more than seeing other people sitting about doing nothing when I am working, right? I lived with a man once who used to make me mad that way. He would loll on the sofa. Loll means lie in a relaxed manner, usually on a chair or a sofa, and watch me doing things for hours, following me round the room with his eyes wherever I went. He used to follow him, he used to keep a watch on him, but he never used to help in his work. He said it did him real good to look on at me messing about. He said it made him feel that life was not an idle dream to be gaped and yawned through, but a noble task full of duty and stern work. He said he often wondered now how he could have gone on before he met me, never having anybody to look at while he worked. Now I am not like that. I can't sit still and see another man slaving and working. Slaving means working very hard. I want to get up and superintend. Superintend means supervise. And walk around with my hands in my pockets and tell him what to do. It is my energetic nature. I can't help it. However, I did not say anything but started the packing. It seemed a longer job than I had thought it was going to be, but I got the bag finished at last and I sat on it and strapped it. "Ain't you going to put the boots in?" said Harris. Now, when he has finished the packing, completed the packing, now Harris said, "Ain't you going to put the boots in?" said Harris. And I looked round and found I had forgotten them. That's just like Harris. He couldn't have said a word until I had got the bag shut and strapped, of course. And George laughed. One of those irritating senseless laughs of his. They do make me so wild. So wild means very angry. I opened the bag and packed the boots in, and then just as I was going to close it, a horrible idea occurred to me. Had I packed my toothbrush? I don't know how it is, but I never do know whether I have packed my toothbrush. My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I'm traveling and makes my life a misery. I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration. Perspiration means sweating all through the face. So I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration and get off the bed and hunt for it. And in the morning, I pack it before I have used it and have to unpack again to get it. And it is always the last thing I turn out of the bag, and then I repack and forget it and have to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and carry it to the railway station wrapped up in my pocket handkerchief. So every time this used to happen with the author. Of course, I had to turn every mortal thing out now, and of course, I could not find it. I rummaged the things up. Rummage the things up means search untidily, and upset everything into much the same state that they must have been before the world was created and when chaos reigned. When chaos reigned means when there was utter disorder and confusion. So while searching for his toothbrush, he has messed up all the stuff in the bag. He has taken all out of the bag and now he has to again repack the bag. Okay. Of course, I found George and Harris 18 times over, but I couldn't find my own. I put the things back one by one and held everything up and shook it. Then I found it inside a boot. I repacked once more. When I had finished, George asked if the soap was in. I said I didn't care at all whether the soap was in or whether it wasn't. And I slammed the bag and strapped it and found that I had packed my tobacco pouch in it and had to reopen it again. It got shut up finally at 10:05 and then there remained the hampers to do. Harris said that he would be wanting to start in less than 12 hours time and thought that he and George had better to do the rest. And I agreed and sat down and they had a go. They had a go means try to pack. They began in a light-hearted spirit, evidently intending to show me how to do it. Now George and Harris were doing the packing as the author has to rest. So they began in a light-hearted spirit means very casually. Okay? Light-hearted spirit evidently intending to show me how to do it. I made no comment. I only waited. When George is hanged, Harris will be the worst packer in this world. This means a humorous comment implying that George is the worst packer in the world, followed by Harris. And I looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles and bottles and jars and pies and stoves and cakes, tomatoes, etc., and felt that the thing would soon become exciting. It did. They started with breaking a cup. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato and squashed it. And they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. And then it was George's turn. And he trod on the butter. Trod on means stepped on the butter. I didn't say anything. But I came over and sat on the edge of a table and watched them. It irritated them more than anything I could have said. I felt that. It made them nervous and excited, and they stepped on things and put things behind them and then couldn't find them when they wanted them. And they packed the pies at the bottom and put heavy things on top and smashed the pies in. They upset salt over everything. And as for the butter, I never saw two men do more. Do more with means make a worse mess of. Okay, so now he's saying I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in my whole life than they did. After George had got it off his slipper, they tried to put it in the kettle. It wouldn't go in, and what was in wouldn't come out. They did scrape it out at last and put it down on a chair, and Harris sat on it, and it stuck to him, and they went looking for it all over the room. I'll take my oath. Take my oath means say with certainty. I put it down on that chair, said George, staring at the empty seat. Now what happened was he put the butter on a chair, and then he sat on it accidentally, and it stuck on his bottom. Okay, on his bottom, on his hips actually. And now he's searching for it everywhere. So he's saying, I put it down on that chair, staring at the empty seat. I saw you do it myself not a minute ago, said Harris. Now, Harris is also saying that I saw you doing that. Then they started round the room again looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. Most extraordinary thing I ever heard of, said George. So mysterious, said Harris. Then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it.
Why here it is all the time, he exclaimed indignantly. Indignantly means in a shocked and angry manner. Where? Cried Harris, spinning round. Stand still, can't you? Roared George, flying after him. And they got it off and packed it in the teapot. Montmorency wasn't it all, of course. Montmorency is their dog. Montmorency's ambition in life is to get in the way and be scolded. If he can squirm in anywhere means wriggle into any space where he particularly is not wanted, and be a perfect nuisance and make people mad and have things thrown at his head, then he feels his day has not been wasted. Now, Montmorency ambition in life, or you can say he wanted to always make people mad, get angry. He has to intrude in everything, right? So that was his main intention in life. To got somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour is his highest aim and object. And when he was succeeded in accomplishing this, his conceit becomes quite unbearable. His conceit becomes quite unbearable means becomes too vain to be put up with. He came and sat down on things just when they were to be packed, and he labored under the fixed belief that means he was sure that whenever Harris or George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold, damp nose that they wanted, right? Dogs always used to do this, right? He put his leg into the jam and played with the teaspoons, and he pretended that the lemons were rats and they got into the hamper and killed three of them. Harry said, I encouraged him. I didn't encourage him. A dog like that doesn't want any encouragement. Now, Harris is blaming the author that you have encouraged the dog to do this, right? To mess up everything. But he said that dog like Montmorency doesn't want any encouragement. He is his own self. It's a natural original sin that is born in him that makes him do things like that. Original sin means curiosity. The packing was done at 12:50 and Harris sat on the big hamper and said he hoped nothing would be found broken. George said that if anything was broken, it was broken, and that his thoughts seemed to comfort him. He also said he was ready for bed. We were all ready for bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night and we went upstairs. Story by Jerome K. Jerome. I hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you.